Today I'm going to be tying up a Hendrickson dry fly in a parachute style. Following the video, I'll talk a little bit about that fly, why I like tying it in a parachute, and also going to be cracking open a beer from Noble Stein Brewing Company, and this is called Gone for 5 Years and Counting. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So if you're interested, stick around to the end of the video, but without further ado, let's get a fresh hook in the vise and let's get to tying. All right, to start out, I have a size 14 dry fly hook in the vise, and I'm using a tan UTC 70 denier as my thread. Start my thread, cut the excess, and start winding back a little bit here towards the bend of the hook. For my tail, you can either use some of your hackle, or I like to use, I just really like the stiffness and the mottled look of Coq de Leon. And this is a medium Pardo. So what I'll do is I'll measure out approximately a hook's length, and then I can fine tune that. I actually like it, so I'm going to keep that, but just with a couple of loose wraps I can pull that either longer or shorter. And to splay out that tail, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my thread underneath those tails and then wind those forward. And I'm going to tie those in to about where I'm going to be doing my post, towards the front here. So like the front 1/3, cut off the excess. And next, let's take my thread back a little bit because we are going to dub the body here. And for that, I just have a super fine dry fly dubbing in Hendrickson pink. Grab a little bit of dubbing out of there. And we're going to make our dubbing noodle here. Some of these bigger flies, that super fine dubbing, you almost have to use a fair amount of it to get the right thickness and the right taper that you're looking for, because that stuff, it will take you a long way. All right, and we'll start our dubbing right at the tails there, at the bend of the hook. Let's start going forward, building a taper as we go. And about right there, I'm going to take it forward a little bit more before we tie in our post. I want that post being at about the 1/3 mark. And for the post material, I just have a polypropylene yarn, and this is actually a yarn from Bonnie Craft Cord, which is just a polypropylene macrame yarn. You can get it like Hobby Lobby or something like that. And I found one in a dun color that I really like. So that's what I use for my post here. But I figure eighted that on just like you would a spinner. And then I pull the two wings together, and this is where I will start then wrapping around the base of that post to stand that straight up and to give us a little bit of rigidity to tie that hackle onto. So that looks pretty good. And for the hackle, I have a medium dun whiting hackle here, and my dad always taught me for dry flies, you know, the hackle has the feather has a natural curve to it, So I have that curve pointing upward like a boat for dry flies, because dry flies float and a boat floats. So that's just a cool little way to remember it. And I always think that to this day. So let's angle that upward, and we'll tie it in at the base with our post. We kind of want that facing inward. We want that concave side facing inward towards the post whenever we have that locked into place. So now that we have our hackle tied in, we're going to finish dubbing our fly here. Get a little bit more. Alrighty, I think that's, I don't quite like that taper. All right, much better. Okay, now I got quite a long post there. It's a nice thing with this Bonnie Craft cord is you don't have to be as conservative because it's pretty cheap. You don't have to be conservative with your materials. So I keep that pretty long, that way I can keep some tension, especially as I start winding that hackle on here. I can keep that upward tension as I'm pulling outward on the hackle as I wind it. Now, after a couple of wraps, what I can do is kind of bend that post away from the direction I'm wrapping the hackle, which really just allows you to pack that in. That's a trick that I saw on a Charlie Craven video. And by packing that in, you just allow all those air bubbles to get caught in there, and it just really helps with the floatability of your fly. And now after a couple of wraps around our post, I can tie off my hackle. And let's give one more wrap underneath just to lock that in. Looks pretty good. And now cut that hackle off, the excess. I like to keep those for like wingtips on small dry flies. So lastly, I have just a piece of paper here with a slit cut in it about halfway up. You can wrap that around your hook. That way you're not capturing any hackle whenever you tie off, or whenever you wind forward, I should say. Now that I have that around the eye there, I'm going to give a couple half hitches. And one more for good measure. Seat that knot. cut the thread free. All right, now what I'll do is I'll take some Solres UV resin to really help with the durability of this thing, and put it at the base of my post where my hackle is. So that's a pretty thin applicator brush, like you can see. I'll put it around those half hitches too. But this is going to help with the durability of this thing. All right, now after I've put some UV resin in there, zap it with our light. That should be good. And now we can cut that post. And there we go. Hendrickson parachute. So that's the Hendrickson parachute. I really love the Hendrickson hatch. For me personally, up around our camp, which is in north central Pennsylvania, we get one heck of a good Hendrickson hatch. Normally around the middle to April. It is just fantastic. One of the nice things about this hatch is it occurs like right in the middle of the day, kind of during the warmest part of the day. So it's something where you don't have to get up super early. You don't have to stay out real late like you're waiting for a spinner fall. It's one where around lunchtime, after you've eaten lunch, we could leave camp and head out and try and hit a hatch. And the reason I like tying this in a parachute, parachutes are actually my favorite style dry fly to fish. It's one that sits close to the water. It's not up off the surface like a traditional catskill style. And it has a lot of floatability. And for that, so a parachute and a catskill, I think, are the best floating dry flies, at least, you know, in my opinion, with the styles that I tie. And it's one that if it gets waterlogged, you can dry it off pretty easily. So that's why I like tying in the parachute. But as for the beer, again, this is a beer called Gone for 5 Years and Counting. And let me read a little bit about this on Untapped. And if you do have Untapped, you can follow me there. I'll leave my tag at the bottom of the screen here. But this West Coast inspired triple IPA incorporates hops that we started using as home brewers and hops brand new to Noble Stein. Old school and new school techniques were used side by side to celebrate our many years of brewing. These all work together to create a piney, earthy, hop-forward beer with huge aroma and flavor. That's what Noble Stein has on their Untapped for the description. So it is a West Coast style IPA. So I'm going to expect something a little bit more brittle, a little bit more bitter. And let's pour this guy out. That was a terrible pour. But it definitely has that West Coast look. It's like more of a brown, very clear. You're not getting the hazy stuff like in your New England IPAs. And it's going to be more bitter. Especially it gives you the piney, the earthy notes to it. So let me try and get through the foam and get a taste. So, extremely good. Definitely, you know, has that West Coast style. Very bitter. And excellent. This brewery is out of Indiana, Pennsylvania. A couple of good breweries out of Indiana, which is pretty local to where I'm from. I'm from a little bit east of there, but Definitely good beer. I'm gonna finish this, tie up a couple more Hendricksons, and hopefully here by the middle of April, I'll be putting them to some good use. So thank you guys for watching, and we will see you on the next video. Cheers.